So, in Cape Town, a perfect storm of economic pressures is brewing, creating a situation the city itself is now calling a crisis. Let's break down exactly what's happening.
And look, that's not me being dramatic. This powerful phrase, a crisis within a crisis, comes straight from an official City of Cape Town report. It's a pretty stark admission that really sets the stage for the incredibly high stakes we're about to unpack here.
At the very heart of this situation, you've got two massive challenges that are just on a collision course. First, this intense, widespread financial pressure that's squeezing household budgets to the breaking point. And second, a stubbornly high rate of youth unemployment that's leaving a whole generation in limbo.
All right, to really get a grip on this crisis, we've got to look at the economic pressure cooker that residents are living in every single day.
Now, what's so telling here is that the city has officially flagged this whole situation as a high-level strategic risk. That might sound like a bunch of bureaucratic jargon, but what it really means is they see this as a major threat to the city's stability. They see a direct and, frankly, dangerous link between families struggling to pay their bills and young people who just can't find work.
And this squeeze, it isn't just a vague feeling, you know? It's being driven by some cold, hard numbers that are turning up the heat on pretty much everyone.
Let's start with inflation, 6.9%. That was the average inflation rate back in 2022. I mean, that's the highest it's been in over a decade, since 2009. And we're not talking about the price of luxury goods here. This spike is being driven by the rising cost of absolute essentials, things like fuel and electricity.
Okay, so to fight that inflation, the South African Reserve Bank hiked its key interest rate, the repo rate, not once, not twice, but 8 times in a row, landing it at 7.25%. Now, for anyone out there with a mortgage, a student loan, or any credit card debt, this number means your monthly payments are going up, taking even more cash right out of your pocket.
So think about this. Your personal costs are just going through the roof, but the national economy, it's barely moving. Growth was estimated at a pretty sluggish 2.5% for 2022. A big reason for that is constant load shedding, which is just crippling businesses and killing any chance of a real recovery. It's a trap, right? Prices are up, debt is more expensive, and the economy isn't growing to provide any kind of relief.
Now, this intense economic pressure, it isn't felt equally across the board. The most acute, the most human cost is falling squarely on the city's youth, creating a massive unemployment crisis for an entire generation.
In fact, the city's report specifically flags youth unemployment as a particular concern. Amidst all the other economic struggles, this tells you that the situation for young people is recognized as being exceptionally dire.
And this chart, wow, it just shows you how rapidly the situation has deteriorated. Just look at that jump. In a single year, the youth unemployment rate in South Africa leaped from an already staggering 59% to over 65%. That's a catastrophic rise.
So this is where it all comes together. We've got widespread financial pain meeting mass youth unemployment. Let's look at how these two factors combine to create a really serious citywide security risk.
It's the natural question, isn't it? I mean, you can't have this much economic hardship and social frustration building up without it leading somewhere. So what happens when it all just boils over?
The city's own analysis lays it out crystal clear. You take the intense financial pressure on households, you add the desperation of high youth unemployment, and then you pour fuel on that fire with public discontent over load shedding. The direct consequence, as the city itself is warning, is an environment where public unrest becomes much, much more likely.
All right, so faced with this incredibly volatile mix, what is the city actually doing? Let's turn to their strategy for trying to contain this crisis before it spirals completely out of control.
Okay, so the city's response rests on 4 main pillars. First, providing direct, practical support for job seekers. Second, trying to manage city tariffs to avoid adding to the financial burden. Third, acknowledging the immense mental stress of all this and offering psychosocial support. And fourth, basically preparing for the worst-case scenario with contingency planning.
And this isn't just talk. These pillars translate into real-world actions. We're talking about things like providing free bus rides to help people get to job interviews, while also looking at ways to keep those essential tariff increases to a minimum. And crucially, it also means security directorates are actively updating their contingency plans for potential public unrest.
Which leaves us with the final huge question. The city is taking steps, but when you're up against massive forces like national inflation, a stagnant economy, and a generational unemployment crisis, are these measures really enough to defuse what looks like an economic ticking time bomb? That's the challenge Cape Town, and really all of South Africa, is confronting right now.